Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm going to do a book review today for Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I read this book recently and I was quite impressed with it. This book's from 1932, so it's a very old book now, and it describes a dystopian future world that's set in 632 AF. AF stands for After Ford, which is a reference to Henry Ford, the car manufacturer. In real time, this book's set in about 500 years into the future, and it describes a society that's based on intelligence-based hierarchy. So in this book you have alphas, betas, deltas and gammas, I believe. Alphas are the highest members of society who do all the good jobs, and gammas are like the less intelligent people who do all the menial work. And right at the beginning of the book we see babies being made in a factory, in like a lab, on like a conveyor belt with loads of test tubes with embryos in them. And these embryos are given different chemicals that affect their IQ and their brain development. So for example, the gammas are actually given alcohol. Alcohol's put into the embryos and fetuses, and it kind of stunts their growth and damages their IQ. So it's all about engineering people to serve a certain purpose in society. And people are completely brainwashed to serve the state. The family unit has been completely dismantled, and people are like encouraged to just sleep around and have sex with different people and live a kind of polygamous lifestyle. So the whole fabric of society has been changed to kind of create these people who just want to serve society. And the main source of pleasure for people comes from a drug called soma. At the end of the day, everyone queues up for this drug, and then they just go home at night and just get high from this drug called soma. And the basic story follows a character called Bernard, who's an alpha, so he's quite high up in society, and because he's quite intelligent, he can see through the system, and he kind of rebels against the system. And he travels to another country that hasn't been colonised by this system, and he comes back a changed man, and it kind of disrupts things. And it's quite a scary book. The premise of the story about people being engineered and manipulated in this way is quite scary. There are two scenes that stick out in my mind when I see this book and when I think about this book. The first one is a scene where these babies, these gamma babies, are being conditioned to be scared of books, because they don't want the gammas to be interested in reading books, because they don't want them to be intelligent. So there's a scene where there's a pile of books in a room, and there's about 5 toddlers. And the toddlers kind of crawl up to the book out of curiosity, and then as soon as they touch the book, they get an electric shock and they all start crying and walk the other way. And so it's like an early conditioning exercise to kind of put them off reading, to stop them being clever and gaining knowledge. It's quite a scary scene. And also there's another scene where toddlers are being taught death conditioning. They want people to be okay with the idea of dying. They don't want people to be scared of death, because they just want people to serve the system and then die peacefully without any protests. So there's actually a scene in a hospital ward where there's a woman dying on a deathbed, and right next to her there's about 10 school children all running around playing games and being happy, with like a teacher singing hymns and nursery rhymes to them, and it's all designed to kind of familiarise them with death and make them kind of relaxed and okay about the whole process. So that there are two very powerful scenes in the book that make it quite scary, and the whole story is very scary as well. I was quite anxious about reading this book because it's so old. It's from the 1930s, the early 1930s, but I usually don't go back any further than the 1960s because I find that with old books the prose can be quite hard to read. But the prose in this book isn't too bad. It's quite readable. Huxley's writing style is okay. His vocabulary is a bit different, but the book is quite readable. A lot of people compare this book to George Orwell's 1984. Now, although I like this book, I think if you had to choose between this and 1984, my recommendation is to read 1984 by George Orwell. This is a good book, but 1984 it's in one of my top 5, I think. So I think I'd advise you to read 1984 if you had to choose. But it's still a good book. It's a classic. It's an all-time classic, and it's worth a read. So I'd say yes, it's a good book and it's worth your time and effort reading. Okay, so buy it and read it, and look out for my next video. I'll be back in about a week or 2 with another video. In the meantime, head over to my site, which is jamesflynn.org. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.